We should be good to go. Okay. Okay, I might have some trouble with my microphone. You guys can hear me okay now, right?
Yes, yes.
This is all these technical difficulties. Mercury's in retrograde, that's what I blame. It's always the planets. All right, so I want to go ahead and get started. Obviously, we are having some technical difficulties with people being able to join. So hopefully we can get everybody logged in. Marita, do you want to say anything?
Yes, just thank you everyone for joining. As many of you already know, I'm Maurizio. I'm work as export manager for MOA International, and in this webinar, I will be the moderator. Let's say Araz assistant. I will moderate questions, and I will be head assistant. I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you, Maurizio. So yeah, Maurizio is joining us from Italy, and he will help me. So once I switch the cameras to where the doll heads are, I'm not going to really be able to see the screen. So he will help in answering your questions. I'm going to encourage you guys to utilize the chat box for any questions that you do have. A quick introduction in case you guys don't know who I am. My name is Araz Nelson, and I have been working with and using MOA International and Magix 10 for, I believe, the last a little over 4 years when they came to the US. I was interested in it because I'm sorry, I keep moving my camera. I was ready for something new, and the idea of a color that processed in 10 minutes that wasn't progressive was very intriguing to me. And so I ordered a few of the colors to see if it would really work. Very similar to what you guys will get today. You guys will get 3 colors. I ordered 3 colors. I ordered a natural, a red, and an ash, I think. And I was like, there's no way this is going to work. And when I did it, I was like, oh, okay. So this is a game changer. And so ultimately using the product led me to wanting to get a little bit more involved with the company because I really saw a need for something like this in our industry. Not that 10-minute color is new, but the technology in Magix 10 is just so vastly different. And I saw that there was definitely a benefit to it. So let's fast forward to 2020. We all experienced COVID, and a lot of us, unfortunately, were shut down with our businesses. And what ended up happening is once we were allowed to go back, whenever that was for you, there was this huge surge of clients that we had to service. And so the need that I saw for something like Magix 3 years ago, a lot more people are seeing now and seeing the benefit of how much more money we can make or how many more clients we can see with a color line that processes in 10 minutes, but also has reliable and predictable results. So I think that's what was missing when it comes to the 10-minute color world is the reliability, is the true to tone deposit that wasn't available until Magix 10, is the 100% gray coverage that really wasn't available until Magix 10. So for those of you who have been using Magix and seeing the results are incredibly shiny. You're getting great color deposit, and it's an all-in-one line. So from my end, in being involved for the last few years, seeing the excitement growing, seeing the amount of people who are joining our webinars, who are tagging us on social, it's just so very exciting. Because I always say this, that I speak so passionately about it because it changed my business. Right. I've been doing hair for 20 years. I've been a stylist and now salon owner. And what happened to my business when I brought Magix 10 on is mind blowing in the sense that I don't work long days. I don't work weekends. And some people choose to, and that's totally fine. But I have a kid and I have a family and I want to spend time with him. And so increasing my bottom line while decreasing my hours, super, super, super helpful for me. So I'm going to actually switch my cameras. Give me 1 second here. Should be tight. Okay. I'm gonna switch my camera so we can get started on our pretty little dolly today. So give me a second while I move these guys around. Can you hear me okay? Because I feel like my microphone isn't working. Maurizio, is the sound okay?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I don't know if the mic is working, but as long as you guys can hear me. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about Magix, but I want to show you this placement technique. And so I don't know about you guys. I'm a huge fan of like the way balayage looks. What I'm usually not a fan of is the time that it takes to process. Sometimes I feel like open air balayage just takes longer because we're not doing a heavier, fuller saturation. So I have a lot of clients who will come in for gray coverage often. And sometimes, especially in the summer months, they want to add some lightness, add some brightness, but I don't want to spend 3 or 4 hours. And so one of the reasons I'm showing this technique is so that you guys can, if you have a root coverage or gray coverage client who's wanting some lightness and brightness, this is a technique that you can use for them that's quick, that's going to give you like a maximum blonding effect in a very short amount of time. So you don't have to say, oh no, we don't have time for that today. So you can do that. And it's also for, like I said, I use this technique on a lot of clients. So I want to show you the sectioning. I'm going to show it in the camera ahead so you guys can see overall. There is a huge push and trend of this money piece, and I absolutely personally love it. But it's funny because I wonder, like, why is it called the money piece? Why is it called the money piece? So I have my own spin on it, but why do you guys think it's called the money piece? This front here, why do we call it the money piece? While you guys answer that in the chat box, I'm going to be mixing my Lift 9 lightener. The packaging super cute, but while you answer that, I want to just give you a quick tip on any kind of lightener that is a dedusted lightener, which Lift 9 is. Something that you want to do to keep the consistency in your bleach is every time you're about to mix or scoop some out, give the bag a little knead, massage it a little bit, because what happens in the dedusted lighteners is over time, and this isn't just Magix, this is just in general, over time, if you're not maneuvering and kneading and mixing the product, sometimes what can happen is the active ingredients can settle down and you're gonna get a little bit of like inconsistent results. So think about the active ingredients. If they're settling, if I don't move this for 3 months, for example, or 2 months or 1 month, depending on how much you use, the active ingredients tend to settle in the bottom. So I'm not going to get as much lift from the powder up top. And then the very last 1 or 2 scoops, I'm going to get like crazy lift. So just a quick tip, give it a little massage before you mix. Mauricio, did anybody answer on why we call this the money piece?
Because that's the place where the client most wants, no, wait.
Yes.
I thought it was 90s throwback from the movie Swingers. It's Somali, baby.
That too. But guys, here's why I call it the money piece. Because when you have a client that does that balayage, that lived in type of look, how often are they really coming in to get their hair touched up? They're coming in every like 3 months, if you're lucky, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. So I'm always thinking about dollars and cents. So when the trend of the money piece came about, I was so excited because that means that my balayage clients will come in more often, because if I have lightness and brightness right at the front of their face and it's going to grow out, they're not going to like it. So it's money because it's called the money piece because it's money in my pocket. That's the way I look at it. Of course, I don't tell my clients that, but any of your balayage or lightening clients, you want to make sure that you do some sort of a money face framing, and that guarantees that they're going to come back a little bit sooner than they would if you didn't do that. So with my lightener, so you guys saw I massaged and kneaded the bag. I did 2 scoops, which was 30 grams of lightener, and I mixed 2 to 1 to start with. So I put 2 parts of developer, 1 part of bleach, and I have a really very thick and creamy consistency. I personally, when I'm foiling hair, to me, texture is what determines my consistency. So if their hair is finer in texture, I will make my lightener thicker because it's going to stay in the foil easier. But I will make sure that my developer is lower, because when we're talking about lightener, there's a saying that is coined in the industry: thicker is quicker. So the thicker your lightener consistency is, the quicker you're going to get the processing. But when we're dealing with fine hair, sometimes I don't want a quicker processing, because fine hair typically tends to process quicker anyways. So if I'm dealing with a fine hair textured client, I want a thicker consistency with my lightener, but I don't want it to work too fast, so I drop my developer down. So in that situation, I would use a 12 volume instead of 21 and make it thicker. She's a mannequin head, so it doesn't really matter. I prefer to use a little bit on the thicker side so my foils don't move. Now, if I'm dealing with a client that has coarser hair and the diameter of it is really thick, I will mix a creamier lightener so that I make sure that I can get saturation in between all of that hair. So that's just a little tip. Thicker is quicker. So if you want your lightener to work faster, mix it in a thicker consistency, but make sure if the hair is fine, drop your developer down. I want to show you her sectioning really quickly. So when it comes to the money piece in the front, the goal is for it to look like a nice pop, but not a chunk. So I still see people who do the money piece and they take their foils and they place them horizontally on the front hairline, so it's like a big chunk. That's the throwback 90s for sure. And if that's the look your client is going for, that's totally fine. But my key to a soft money piece is to wherever they part their hair, okay, based on where they part, you're going to take a V going back. So what's going to happen is all the hair, all of this hair is going to veil on top of it, and the money piece starts off thin and then pops around their face. So when you do it in a horizontal block, it's just a big chunk coming all the way down. When you section it like a V, and then I'm going to show you how to foil it, what's going to happen is it's going to be this soft veil at the root, and then you're going to see the pop right around their face where they want it. So if you're doing it in a horizontal section, I'm going to try to do an inverted V based on where their part is. Okay, so I did the inverted V based on where their part is to the high brow of the eyebrow. So like the middle where the arch is, that is your section for the top of the money piece on both sides. Okay, part of the money piece that people always forget, unfortunately, is the side. So this too is part of your money piece. So what I did was I went around the hairline, and let me move this out of the way so you guys can see the sectioning. I took it straight down to behind the ear. If you don't pop this as well as this, you're gonna have blonde and then dark. So something when it comes to the money piece that's very important, it's all around the perimeter. What I sometimes do on my longer hair clients is I will also make the nape part of the money piece as well. Because think about it this way, when you have long hair and you wear it down, if I only do the front, what about this? Right? So remember, the money piece is going to be all around the nape. Now this mannequin has shorter hair. My clients with shorter hair, I don't worry about the nape. So the sections that we're going to be lightening is the V's here, these side pieces, one on the right, one on the left. And then I took a mohawk section. We have these two pieces and one right here. Let me see if I can tilt her down. So there's a section here, a section here, and a section here that we will be lightening as well. Everything that is braided is going to be our depth. So a lot of times when it comes to highlighting or balayaging, where a lot of people miss the mark is leaving enough depth in the hair. Sometimes we forget to leave the depth, and then what happens is we are left with way too much blonde and not enough depth. So I use rubber bands just because it's easier for me. I'm gonna start with the very front hairline. And take this guy out. So once I have my foils placed, then I'm gonna mix my base color. But what I do is in the front hairline, I think you guys can see, okay. I'm gonna take a very thin section and do a baby light. Anytime you're going to foil around the hairline, you have to make sure that you baby light, because if you don't, if you take a solid slice right around the hairline, or if you take a thick weave right around the hairline, when that client puts their hair up, it's not gonna look cute and natural and blended. So a tip on foiling, guys, I see a lot of people on Instagram, everybody foils their own way, but I wanna give you a quick tip. If you want the finest weave, baby light possible, hold your fingers as close to the scalp as possible, and you're gonna be able to pick up way more hair. Versus if I hold out here and try to baby light, I won't be able to get as fine of a weave. So when you're trying to do a finer weave, try to go as close to the scalp as possible and pick up that baby hair. So baby light, they call it strand light, fine highlight, whatever you want to call it. We're going to do a very fine weave, okay? And then in my application, I will always glue on my initial application down in the mid shaft and make sure that I have it nice and stuck to the foil. And then I work my way up, okay? I'll pack all the hair in the foil. And here's another tip too. If you have enough product in the middle of the foil, you're not gonna have to fight the hair to try to get it to get in the foil. What happens is if you don't put enough product when you first glue it down, and you're gonna like, what are they, like you kind of like scoop the hair into the foil. If there isn't enough product there, it's not gonna stick and you're gonna be fighting with it, okay? So in order to not fight with it, make sure that you put heavy product. How I fold my foils in the very front is I will fold it 3 times, and then I will put in a 4th little mini foil or a fold. This is going to lock my foil in place, and it's not covering their eyes, okay? So if you have issues with foils slipping, which a lot of people do, try to do a little sandwich at the bottom of the foil. It's gonna help lock it in a little bit better, okay? So when it comes to the money piece, again, I'm following my same angle. So I start with a baby light, and then I'm going to do a slice. With a slice, people get scared to slice sometimes, and I think that with a slice, you will get, if it's fine enough, you're gonna get a veil of color that's not going to look chunky, because again, we're placing the color at an angle, we're placing the foil at an angle. So the slice is going to give you the majority of the pop that you're looking for in that money piece. So then I work my lightener up close to the hairline, and then right here, it's your choice, okay? Do you like to feather it up? Do you like to go as close to the hairline as possible? It really depends on what works for you. I always like to go as close as possible, and then I'll hold the brush at an angle and feather. I think, can you guys see? Maybe this way. Okay, and then I'll feather. Make sure that I'm heavily saturating. An issue that comes up when lightening hair is always, if you're getting splotchy lightening, it's a saturation issue. So you want to not be stingy with the product. you want to make sure that you are saturating enough. So again, I'm locking my foil. Okay. Following it with another slice. I'm going to do the right side of the head, and then if we have time, I'll get to the left. So I'm going to do another slice. So I did a baby light, 2 slices back to back. There's no hair left in between. I'm going to slice the hair again. I want a nice pop. Get it as close to the scalp as possible. Glue in the middle. Make sure you put enough product so that when you let go of this tension, your foil is not going to slip. So there's enough product there. Now I can scoop in the ends and it sticks, no problem. I don't have hair flying everywhere. I'm not fighting with the hair. I'm not fighting with the foil. And then I'll work my product up. And then I feather it into the scalp area. So we start with a baby light right around the hairline. We're gonna do 2 slices, and then we end again with a baby light. So the reason you wanna end with a baby light is so that it's a soft and diffused dimensional money piece and not a big chunk. So my last section, I will take and I will baby light as close to the root as possible to blend in the 2 slices that I just put in. Any questions so far? I know this is pretty, it may be different from what you're used to doing, or maybe this is something that you already do. Any questions on this placement?
So far, we have one question, but this is not related to the placement. Can you just confirm that you have used the scale?
That I have used what?
The scale, the weighting scale.
Yes. So I measured 2 to 1 with my lightener initially, and it gave me a thicker consistency. So then I added a little bit more lightener to make it a consistency that I like to work with. So as manufacturers' directions, you have to mix at least 1 to 1. At least 1 to 1. Anything after that is really dependent on what you prefer to work with. So again, remember I said I like a thicker consistency on finer hair. I like a thinner consistency on coarse resistant hair. Okay, so here's where this is going to get interesting, and maybe you haven't ever seen this before, maybe you have, I don't know. So I'm going to now work on the side of the mannequin head. And this is where I want her to start looking like she's balayaged. So the number one thing I'm going to do, remember we said around the hairline, always baby light around the hairline. So I'm going to do 2 baby light sections following her hairline because she's got a pretty unique hairline. Hairdressers often ask for placement techniques, and I always love to give a good placement technique, but it really depends on the client's hairline that you're working with. So I pay a lot of attention to detail. And so to me, I work around their hairline. Some clients have a really funky hairline where I have like 3 different foils just following along with their hairline. So I'm just going to baby like this. And I want to talk a little bit about the Magix 10 technology. And actually, I'm going to start with the Lift 9. So a couple of people in the chat box said that they're using Lift 9 and they love it. So Lift 9 is designed to be used with Magix 10. So what that means for you is if you know anything about Magix 10, you know that it is a color that processes in 10 minutes. So if we have a lightener that is designed to be used with Magix 10, what do you think we can say about this lightener? That it's probably going to work fast, right? So Magix 10 or Magix Lift 9 is designed to be used with Magix 10, so it does work fast. So what I'm saying is if you typically use a 21 volume or a 20 volume with your bleach, when you try Lift 9, I would recommend you try it with a 12 volume. If you typically use a 30 volume with your bleach, when you try Lift 9, I'm going to recommend that you try it with 21 volume, okay? Because it is a lightener that works faster than what you're probably used to working with. But I will say this, in working with this company for the last 4 years and all the products, the attention to make sure that the hair is healthy is a very big deal. So within Lift 9 is bamboo carbon extract, which is going to help in not being yellow. We also have bamboo carbon extract in there to help make sure that the integrity of the hair is not compromised. So although everything works fast, the color works fast, the lightener works fast, the hair will still look and feel incredible, because that's what's really most important to Magix, is to make sure that we're not damaging hair. Because personally, I don't like to work on damaged hair, so I don't want to be the cause of why somebody's hair is damaged. Okay. All right, so now that I've done my baby lights, I'm going to take a subsection and I'm going to slice it. Now, because her hairline was at like an angle, I'm gonna take out a mini slice here to make sure that I have a nice straight line. So I'm gonna leave out this corner, and then I'm going to slice this piece right here. Okay, so far it's very similar to what we did in the top with the money piece, right? Baby light and then a slice. What I'm gonna do next is what's gonna make it look very different than what you're probably used to seeing. So while I do this, I wanna talk about a little bit more about Lift 9. So I wouldn't recommend, and there's some of you who are using Lift 9 and you use 40 volume with it, and that's on you. I personally wouldn't recommend using 40 volume with it, because I think you might not be used to how fast that works. So I personally will use our 6 volume developer, our 12 volume, or our 21 volume, 32 if I'm doing balayage. But typically 6 volume, 12 volume, and 21 volume is all I use to use Lift 9. I feel like I don't need some of the higher volumes. Lift 9 also has pigment dissolvance technology. So here's like why it's different is, yes, it's a blue lightener. So you guys can see it's not white. There is blue pigment to it, but it's not a cosmetic blue. It's an ingredient that withstands the alkalinity of the lightener and actually helps refine the warmth as it's lifting. So you know, sometimes you'll use a blue lightener and you pop in your foils, right? And then after whatever 20 or 30 minutes of processing, you check and you're like, sweet, pale yellow, good to go. And then you take the client to the shampoo bowl and you put the water on it and it's canary yellow. Has that ever happened to you? And you're like, wait, it was just level 9. What happened? So most of the time, those ingredients, guys, the blue lighteners, the ingredients in there are cosmetic. So they typically like kind of trick your eye. With Magix Lift 9, it's not. So what you see is what you get. If you see the hair and it's pale yellow, it's pale yellow. You don't have to worry about it turning canary as soon as the lightener washes off of it. Okay, so I'm going to move her this way. So I pay a lot of attention in the way that I stitch my weaves. So remember earlier I was saying if I want a baby weave, I'm going to get closer to the scalp. If I want a chunkier weave. But something to think about when you're foiling is we don't always have to do a regular highlight or a baby light or a chunky light. You can mix the two. So I created a slice foil right here. And what I want over that slice is something to look like a balayage. So I will take my first stitch, having it be a big chunky one. And then the middle ones will be a baby light. And then I will take another chunky stitch. So I'm going to put it on a foil so you guys can see that it is going to look like a balayage, but I'm putting it in a foil. So I'm doing like a 2-in-1 situation. So let me grab this guy. So when I put it in the foil, can you guys see how I'm chunkier here? I'm making like a V with the baby light in the middle. And then behind it, I have my slice to really make it pop. So when it comes to the application saturation, remember I said most people, when it's inconsistent lift, it's a saturation issue. So I'm gonna make sure that I do a heavier saturation on the outsides of the hair where I have the chunkier pieces. And then saturate as heavily on the middle where I have the baby lights. So I'm going to put more lightener on the chunky pieces, less lightener on the baby light pieces. And the reason for that is I want it to come up at the same level. I want it to look the same. But if I do the same type of saturation, my baby lights are going to come and pop way quicker than my chunky side pieces. Does that make sense? So I don't see a lot of people playing around with the stitching and the foils. And to me, that's like the funnest part, because visually you can create whatever you want just in the stitch alone. So I'm going to fold that foil up, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my next pieces. So I'm going to leave a little bit of hair out, and then I'm going to take a slice. And then I'm going to take a baby light. So slices are really awesome when you're trying to create maximum blonding in minimal timing, okay? So all I'm going to do next is a slice, and then we'll do that same type of stitch with the V, chunkier on the outside, skinnier on the inside. So lift 9 meant to be used with Magix 10. So why don't we spend a couple minutes talking about why and what Magix 10 is and how it is different than any other 10-minute color line that you have ever used. So those of you in the chat box, can you put in there if you have experience with any other 10-minute, any other lines that process in 10 minutes? You don't have to tell me what they are, but have you, and what did you find with them?
Okay. So, okay, so we have a question about the lift 9. Do you put any bonder in the bleach?
So I personally don't use a bond builder. I'm not a fan of them. Nothing against, if you do, you can. You don't have to, but if that makes you feel more confident in your bleaching, then yes, you can lift, or you can add whatever bond builder that you typically use. I just personally don't use it.
So about the other 10 minutes color, okay, someone has replied, no, I'm loyal to Magix. And other one, yes, matte looking. Or another one, yes, but bad result.
Bad results, yeah. So typically if you have, so see again, guys, my foil, I have my very fine baby lights here, and I have my chunky kind of like a V pattern on the outside. And again, I'm saturating heavy on my outside pieces, and then way lighter on the middle baby light pieces. So when it comes to Magix 10, what I want to talk about is why it's different, just even in the 10-minute color category world, right? So most people who have tried old technology of 10-minute color, they've ran into these same results that you're talking about. It's a little bit murky or muddy looking. It's not very reflective, and it's not very predictable. So with Magix, the way that our technology is formulated, it's called spectrum technology. And all that means is that the dyes that are used, the colors that are used in our tubes, the dye molecules, are a lot smaller in size and smaller in weight. So when you put Magix 10 hair color on, it's not highly alkaline. So you don't have to worry about the damage that it could be causing to the hair, because most old 10-minute technology does that, right? It's very, very alkaline, and it's very, very loaded with dyes. So it damages the hair, and then it over processes and over deposits. Magix 10 does not do that. So the highest amount of alkalinity that we have in our color is 2.7%, and that's going to be in the Ultra Lift blondes. So low in ammonia. And just for reference, in general, like most hair colors, the ranges are up to 4%. So we're at 2.7% of ammonia, and that's just in the high lifts. And then, like I said earlier, the dye molecules that we use, guys, they're smaller, so they get into the hair with a lot more ease. And then once they're in the hair, they couple and they combine and they get bigger so that it doesn't wash out or fade out, okay? So spectrum technology, huge for understanding how Metrics 10 works. And then the other side of that is that people think that it's very damaging. You think express, you think 10 minutes, you're like, oh shoot, that must be damaging. And it's not. So we have what we call Caraveg 18. And what Caraveg 18 is, I almost refer to it as like a mask for the hair. I'm gonna push her down here so you guys can see. So Caraveg 18 is plant-based amino acids, serine, threonine, arginine, soy and wheat protein that's in the color. So it's not like an additional additive that you have to add in there so that it gets the hair healthy. It's in the color, it's in our developers, it's in our shampoo and conditioner, and its job is to make sure that the hair stays healthy, that the lipid barrier is replenished, that there are collagen producing stuff in there to make sure that the hair looks better after you colored it and that it's in better condition after than before, okay? All right, so I'm moving on to now my one half of this top mohawk section. Remember earlier, I took the V to where the high point of the eyebrow was. I followed back into the mohawk at that same line. So we have the high V and then into the mohawk. So I'm working on this right side so you guys can see. I took out a little piece of hair here for depth. So when I had the V here, that point of the V, I sliced it out, I tied it out of the way. This is going to stay dark. This is what's going to make the money piece pop, okay? So when we're working on the mohawk section, I'm gonna take the foils and place them, I always get confused with horizontal and vertical, so I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna place them going this way instead of going this way. And I'm going to, same situation as the sides, we're gonna make it look like a balayage. So the very first section, I'm going to do a very, very fine, let's see if you guys can see her. I'm gonna do a very, very fine baby light weave. On the part, I will typically do a fine baby light because I don't want there to be a harsh line of demarcation when it grows out. So look at how thin that section is. So I'm gonna do my baby light, same thing as I did earlier, right? I'm gonna glue where I'm in the middle of the foil to make sure I have a nice stick. And then I add more product, take my hair into that middle section, making sure that I saturate. And then I work the product up. So at the part line, I won't go all the way up to the scalp. I'll go about half an inch out and then I really feather in the lightener to make it blend as much as possible. So I start with a baby light. You can lock your foil. So I lock these foils just to show you guys how to lock. I typically don't lock my foils. So when I sandwich my foils up, I don't zip, like most people will zip the foil. But when you zip, what happens is you're moving the product so you're gonna get a line. Oh, you guys can't see that. So there's a line where I zipped where there isn't as much lightener, and that's gonna create an inconsistent lift. So you don't wanna zip, you just gently fold. And then I will always just kind of lock this piece back in. And I leave my foils like that when I'm working on a client. I don't fold a lot, I leave them pretty open. So I did the baby light. I'm gonna follow with a balayage stitch. So here's where you can get creative. If you want it to look like a V, which is what we have been doing. Remember, we take a thicker piece and then a baby light, baby light, baby light, and then end with a chunk. This is what that would look like. We did it on the sides. It looks a little bit different on the top of the head. Okay, so see with that foil. Okay, but if you want to have fun, you want to get creative, why not make it into a W? Sometimes when you paint, you also paint W's. So you would take your same section and instead of doing a full baby light in the middle part, you would start with a thicker stitch, baby light, baby light, baby light, thicker stitch, baby light, thicker stitch. So now when this veils over, it's going to look a little bit more like a W balayage. So see how just playing around with my stitching is giving me a little bit more creative control on what that end result is going to look like. So on the mannequin that I'm going to show you at the end of this, I didn't do a W, I did a V, but I wanted to show you that you can kind of have fun with the stitching and to start getting creative with how you stitch in your foils. So I'm just going to finish painting this. I want to talk a little bit more about Magic's 10 color and what kind of makes it unique. So we went over the spectrum technology, that it's not heavy packed with dyes, that we have smaller micropigments. Went over Caraveg 18. Remember, Caraveg 18 is that plant-based amino acids and proteins that are in every tube of color to make sure that the hair is healthy, that the hair is shiny, and that the hair feels good. And now I want to talk about what you can do with Magic's 10. So there's a lot of people who, when they think of 10-minute color, they just think that, oh, it's only for gray coverage. Well, I'm here to tell you that every salon service that you do can be done using Magic's 10. So if you do highlights and a base like what we're doing today, or if you do balayage, or if you do root melting, if you do redheads, if you do bright colors, all of that can be done with Magic's 10 in a significantly less amount of time than your traditional color. So think about it this way. If you are only doing gray coverage touch-ups every day, those usually take about 2 hours. With Magic's, you are going to be there for an hour. So the client is in and out of your chair within an hour. Say hypothetically you charge $100 for that service. That service would normally take you 2 hours. With Magic's 10, it now takes you 1, and you charge $100. So you went from averaging $50 an hour with traditional color to $100 an hour just by switching your color line to Magic's 10. That's it. You did nothing else different. You just switched your color line to a color line that processes in 10 minutes, and you just gave yourself a raise. To me, it's a no-brainer, right? But say, for example, you do more of balayage and baby lights, and you do foiling and toning. Well, Magic's 10 is a multi-use line. So what that means is our color, this tool color, can be used as a permanent, can be used as a demi-permanent that is alkaline, can be used as a demi-permanent that is acidic. So with the addition of what we have is called Magic's Morph, this acidifies your formula. So if you're typically using a color line and then you have another color line that is like an acidic demi with a whole different bottle, you don't need that with Magic's. So every single color that we have can be made into an acidic or an alkaline, depending on what you're wanting. We also have high lift blondes that process in just 20 minutes versus the traditional 60 minutes, right? You can do full gray coverage with Magic's 10. So if you're a stylist who maybe recently moved to a salon suite, I know that's not cheap, right? That's a lot of money moving into a salon suite, and you probably don't have a lot of space. Would it make sense then to carry a line that is an all-in-one, right? You can do an alkaline demi with Magic's. You can do gray blending with Magic's. You can do gray coverage. You can do balayage and foiling and everything that you do in just half the time. So to me, going back to dollars and cents, that just makes more sense to be able to take on more clients or work less hours because I'm using a color line that not only is predictable, but it's also fast. So do we have any questions, Maurizio?
So far, no. I suppose you are very clear.
I'm trying to be as clear as possible. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I want to get you guys as much information as possible and get you as excited as possible, but without having to be here for 3 hours. Okay, so this part of the mohawk is now done, right? Remember, I did a baby light, and then I did my W foil. I skipped a section, and then I did the same thing. I did a baby light, and this section I did a V foil. So this side of the head is done. doing the next side, it would be the exact same thing. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be here. So this takes me less than 30 minutes to do when I'm working in the salon. When we're doing webinars, as you guys know, things take a little bit longer because there's talking and pausing and all of that. So we would mimic the same thing on this side with the V, starting with a baby light, slice, slice, baby light. And then here, baby light, slice, and then we start with that balayage stitching. I want to show you the back. So I've taken the same section size as I did on the sides in the back for 2 foils. So what I will do with these 2 foils is the same thing, baby light, and then something that's going to make it look like a balayage, because what then will happen is this will cascade over all the rest of the hair and bring that lightness and brightness to the back. What's cool about any technique that you learn, whether it's from me or whether it's from another educator, is you can completely customize and do what works for you. So take what I'm saying and sharing and placement wise, and see what you can do to customize for yourself. Maybe you want to go a little bit lower, right? Maybe you want to do the money piece down here as well. So for me, this is what I typically do for my clients that want some brightness and pop and highlights when I don't have the time, right? If they book just the coverage and then all of a sudden they want highlights. I'm like, wait, what? No. Okay, wait, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. Let me do a quick 20-25 foil situation. So here we do the baby light again. So when I hold out here, I don't have as much tension and give as I do when I hold closer, and then I just stitch the baby light, strand light, whatever you want to call it. Another tip on highlighting for maximum blondness. So if you don't want to do the baby light and then the balayage look, and you want to just baby light the whole hair, I'm going to give you this tip that was super, super game changing for me. So say, for example, my first foil, I start my stitch on the outside, right? Outside, and then I do my whatever stitch, let's just do it down here. My next foil, I will start this foil with my stitch on the inside. So I'm going to keep this piece out, and then I start stitching on the inside. So what that does for you, if you're trying to get as much blonde as possible, is you're not doing the same stitch over and over and over and over again. Start on the outside, then start on the inside, then start on the outside, then start on the inside. And you're going to cover way more surface area doing it that way if the balayage foil is not for you. So while I put this foil, do we have any questions on Magix 10? So like I said, I'm covering just the basics for you guys today, just like understanding the technology behind it. But any questions so far, Maurizio?
Yes, how would you charge for this service?
So okay, that's a really good question. I have my foiling foiling broken down into 3 different categories. So I have a partial, I have a 3/4, and then I have a full. So this I would charge as a partial because the partial just covers like the T-zone, the money piece, and that's it. 3/4 would then go in through these sections right here where we're leaving that depth. So I would charge it as a partial plus base, because after I put these foils in, I'm going to do her roots, right? Because she, hypothetically, this client came to me for a root coverage, but she wanted to add a little bit of brightness and pop, which is why I'm doing this quick 20 foil application on her. But I would charge it as a partial and base. So again, with my last foil that's going to be up back here, I'm going to make it a W, because that way I'm covering more surface area. So I start with a chunkier stitch, I do a couple baby lights, a chunkier stitch, a couple baby lights, and end it with a chunkier stitch. And this, let's try that again. Okay, so a chunkier stitch, baby lights, chunkier stitch, baby lights, and then a chunkier stitch. So again, this is giving the look of a balayage, but I'm gonna get maximum brightness because sometimes with painting, it's not as bright. So going back to Magics, if you're interested in like giving yourself a raise, this is definitely something that can help you do that. Like I was saying earlier, you can use Magics in any service that you do behind the chair and cut your timing in half. So what I'm going to do after I put this foil in is I'm going to do a root touch up between the foils. Now, the reason I'm showing that is because there are people, colorists, who do things so very differently and not one is wrong, not one is right. So I'm here to tell you, just because I do it this way, it doesn't mean that that's the way that you have to do it. I've had colorists tell me that they will put on the base color first and then go in and do all the highlighting and moving techniques. If that works for you, cool. But personally for me, I like to do my foils and then put in my color application directly after I put in my last foil. Now, because I'm using the developer based on texture, I already know that I'm going to make sure that my blonde doesn't over process by the time my root color is on. So if I use 40 volume with these foils, they might be ready before I'm done doing my foiling application, and I don't want that. So with this model, I used 21 volume, and I will put on my base color, and by the time that 10 minutes is up, there's a good chance that her hair is going to be processed, that her blonde is going to be exactly where I want it to be. And then I just wash it all at the same time. Now, if it's not, so maybe we are working on a client that has layers and layers and layers of box color, right? Or layers and layers of red, and those foils need to sit for a little bit longer. I'm not worried about it. So on the mannequin that I'm going to show you, once I finish showing you how to apply between the foils, I use 6 volume bleach on her, or 6 volume developer with my bleach. And I let her base color sit on for, I think, an additional 30 minutes. So 40 minutes it sat on. Because I wanted the blonde to be really blonde, I used 6 volume developer, right? So I let it sit on for almost 40 minutes, and you guys can see that I didn't get an over deposit of color, and the blonde came out exactly how I wanted it to be. So with the base, we're gonna pretend that this client has gray hair and we need to do her gray coverage. I'm using a 7.3, which is a level 7 gold. Now, if she had more than 30% of gray hair, I would add in a cool natural as well. But I'm just doing straight gold. I have 45 grams of color and 45 grams of 21 volume developer. And all you do is, it's not, it's funny because there's a lot of people who question that. Well, how can I do highlights and base color at the same time? And if you do it just like you have always done it. But again, when you bring in lift 9 to the mixture, our bleach designed to be used with Magix 10, you're not going to run into that problem because your foils are probably going to be, where's my finger, ready to go. So I want to show you the first foils that we put in. 1 second. So I used 21 volume with, or no, I used 12 volume. No, I used 21 volume with this bleach. So if this was a client, I would put the color on, I would time it for 10 minutes and she would be ready to go. So I will go in wherever I have hair and put the color on her roots. Now, if some of the color gets into the foil, I'm not mad at that because I want that blend. I want it to look as natural as possible. I don't want there to be harsh lines. So I will just go in between my foils and apply my root color pretty efficiently, pretty quickly. People ask, well, what happens if it takes longer than 10 minutes to apply? Well, the application or the timing for the color, you don't start timing it until you're finished applying it. So the 10 minutes starts when you put on your last piece of or blob of hair color on the hair. That's when you start the timer. But if you're taking, a couple tips here, if you're taking like 30 or 40 minutes to apply, which I don't think you are, but if you are, right around 20 minutes, you might want to remix a new bowl of color. And that's really for like any color, not just Magic's 10. Because at that point, your color has now began oxidizing, and you're probably not going to get as great of a deposit as you would with a fresher bowl of color. So I'm doing my in-between root color application. Now I'm getting close to where my foils are. And I just very simply move my foils and apply gently as necessary. So these foils aren't locked, the front ones are locked, but they're still not clipping, they're not going anywhere. I'm just doing my root application. What I do after this whole thing is processed, and I'm gonna take them to the shampoo bowl, I will take all my foils out and I'll comb the color into where the bleach is, okay? I know that seems like it would be scary, but what it does is it just softens the lines from the color and the bleach and marries it all together, leaving a really beautiful and blended end result. So I don't have like a line from where the foils are, where the color met, and all that stuff. Typically, when I'm doing a root color application, I'm working away from the client's face instead of on the client's face. Clients tend to get really annoyed when there's a whole bunch of foils in their face. So just a tip, if you're not aware of that, maybe you're doing it unconsciously, work away from their face. They're a lot more comfortable that way. Okay. And then I'll go into where I did my money piece. You can see her. Remember, this was my section of depth. These are old hair cutting scissors. Don't worry, I'm not using my really good shears to cut rubber bands. Okay, this is where I left my depth. I will cover the gray that is over there. And the same thing as I did on the sides, guys. I'm just gonna slowly move my foils and paint in between my foils. The Magic's brush, if you guys have it, is really good for this because it's small and it's compact. So it's easy to get in between the foils versus like those big, huge brushes. Okay, I'll get in between. And then I do the hairline, again, working away from the client's face. And I finish my application just like that. So I would do this side and then I would fully apply. I would wait 10 minutes. I usually set my timer and then I check my foils to see where we're at. So let me show you where we're at with one of these foils because it's only been on, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, Maurizio, would you say? No, less, right?
Yes, less.
So here's where we're at. Oh, you can't see. Let's see how we can get you guys to see this. I'm gonna move this camera. That's where we're at just so far in less than 20 minutes. Okay, I want to show you guys the front pieces where the money piece was. To see how quickly this works. Let me open this guy up and then I'll bring the camera to you. Any questions on Magic's 10 color?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. So first of all, 50 gray or more, how much natural do you recommend for formulation?
So over 50% gray?
Yes.
Okay, let me just show where we're at here with this. So see what I mean? It looks really cool. And then when I wipe it off, it looks the same. It's not more yellow than the rest of the hair. So that's where we're at in just that 15 or 20 minutes of the lightener being on there, which is pretty insane if you ask me. Okay, so I'm going to fold this back up. Is there any other pieces you want to see before I answer the question about the gray coverage? Do you want to see any? Very good.
No.
Okay. So with the white hair coverage, when we're dealing with over 50% white, what you want to do is you want to mix. Okay. So our color wheel shows where all the colors are. So we have a cool natural. I'm just going to show you over here. We have a cool natural 0.0 and we have a warm natural 0.00. So something to remember if you're ordering your free tubes or if you're putting in an order, 0.00 with Magix 10 does not mean double N, it does not mean extra gray coverage. If it's 0.00, it means that it's a warm natural. So when you look in the swatches, the 0.00 family, there we go, warmer. And then this is the 0.0 family, which is a little bit cooler. So there is no true neutral. So when you're dealing with over 50%, you have to add some, over 50%, 25 to 50 grams of a 0.00 or 25 to 50%, 0.00 or point gold, which is the 0.3 in with your formula, or the 0.0. If you want a cooler result, you would add 0.0. If you want a warmer result, you would add 0.00. But you need a mixture of the two to create a true neutral balanced brown for the gray coverage, or a more balanced brown for gray coverage, especially when dealing with over 50%. Any other questions? I want to see the chat box. Let's see.
Yes, there is a question. Maybe you can read about from Celian. I found.
Let me see.
Yes, I suppose there are two similar questions from Celian and Todd.
Okay, so it says, I find that when I do foils and add color in between, the blonde is not as bright and the color bleeds into my blonde. So I have found that coloring roots or coloring first, because it's 10 minutes, my blonde comes out brighter. How does process avoid muted out the blonde while rinsing? Okay, so remember when I was saying earlier, some of you guys like to put the color on first and then put the foils. I think in Sally Ann's case, what she does is she processes the whole roots in 10 minutes, washes it out, and then does her highlights. So when I'm doing something like this, like a 20 foil application, I will do it all at once. But let me tell you, I have some clients who have waist length hair, thick. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And what I do for those clients is I'll do what Sally Ann just said. I will put the root color, process for 10 minutes, wash it, towel dry it, and then go in and do my foils. That way I'm not moving anything around. Where I put the foil is where it stays. You can totally do that and it will still take less time than doing a root coverage and highlights with traditional color. So the question I think at the end was, how does process to avoid muting out the blonde while rinsing? So I personally have never ran into that. The only time you would maybe run into that situation where your blonde is going to get muted out is if your base is really dark and your blonde is really light. And in that situation, I would definitely do them separate. So do your foiling or do your base color first, rinse it out, and then do your foils. Totally up to you. For me, quick application, I like doing this all at once because this client is in and out within an hour and 15, maybe an hour and a half if she has a lot of hair with this application. Okay, so Todd says, I find when placing color in between the foils, just tap the color on the scalp. If you use too much color, it can bleed into the foil, causing splotchy result. Yep, that too, depending on how long their roots are. So if they are coming in like they should be between 4 to 6 weeks, you can definitely just tap the color in between the foils. But when you put too much product and you try to push it, you will have some issues of the color bleeding into where the blonde is. Okay.
Okay, then we have a question from Curtis. Every time I use lift 9 to lighten to level 9, 10, or 8, 9, and 10, and I tone with 9, 12 or 10, 12. It seems over time, within few short minutes, then I have to soak to cap the hair. What I'm doing wrong?
So I don't think that it's that you're doing something wrong. I think that what we need to consider when we're toning with any color, especially an express toner, is how porous is the hair. So if the hair is incredibly porous, which at a level 8, 9, and 10 is going to be very, very porous, we have to finesse the formula. So if you would typically use like a level 9, I would say use a level 10 instead, because Magix does process quickly. And here's another tip for you. If you're using any of our level 9 or 10 or ultra lifts to tone with, which are these guys, these are the ultra lifts right here. We have what's called a 0.00. So when you're toning hair and you're using Magix Morph to acidify, the 0.00 can be used to help dilute the diamond. And here's what I mean. In normal processing, 0.00 was designed as a blonding enhancer for our ultralift wands. So when you're using our ultralift wands with double 40, you could mix in half of your formula with 0.00. It's an alkalinity boost. It's an extra half to 1 level of lift. But because we're using it in the toning situation, all it's doing, because it's acidified, all it's doing is help diluting your deposit. So if you have porous hair that's going to grab onto the ash and reject the warmth, I would dilute it down with the 0.00. And I think that you're going to have a better result. And this is with any toning situation. Porous hair, you want to add some clear, or else it's going to overtake on the ends, especially with a faster toner. I hope that does that answer. Who was that? Curtis, does that answer that? Hopefully that helps. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to read any other questions. Oh, I see something about heat. No, I do not process. I don't even have a dryer in here. There's no need to process under heat, because Lift 9 works pretty quickly. And I'll tell you this, I don't know of any manufacturer that actually recommends processing a lightener under heat. What happens is that the developer is already a pretty unstable solution. And when you put it in heat, it's going to become even more unstable and give you some shoddy results. And I'm just being honest, I've tested lighteners under dryers when I was in salons. It just gives me a more inconsistent lift. Sometimes I've had foils leaking. So personally, with me and dryers, it's a big no. I don't see the need in it. If I want a faster processing, then I'm going to use a higher developer. But for me, the heat just adds an extra layer of damage that I personally don't want to work with, and we don't recommend putting the color or the lightener under heat.
Another question is, does the Magix 10 lightener or bleach swell?
So I feel like it can swell if you put it under heat, but typically when I use it, it stays put where I use it, especially if I don't fold up my foils a lot. So that's why I said earlier, when I fold my foils, I typically don't fold the sides so that if it has the room to expand if it needs to. But when I mix 2 to 1, even 3 to 1, I don't find that it swells or puffs up unless I leave it on for like 3 hours. Then it starts getting puffy. And I did that just as a test on a strand, but no, it stays put where you put it, and it works best. But good question with the puffiness. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, hair have to be dry for application?
No, hair does not have to be dry, but it can't be wet. So I personally find applying color on damp hair just works better in all aspects for gray coverage, for even color deposit. I prefer working on damp, but I mean damp. So if I squeeze it, there can't be any water coming out, or else it's going to dilute my color. So if the hair is a little bit damp, totally fine to apply the color, especially if it's clean, it's going to take a lot better. Okay.
Dan Todd says, I always rinse my color before releasing the foils. It helps tremendously to avoid unwanted tonic of the blonde.
Rinse the color between the foils first. Is that what that was?
I always rinse my color before releasing the foils.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I said earlier, guys, how you do it is, if it's working, that is awesome. There's so many different ways to get a desired result. And so what works, and I'm glad that you shared that because now everybody can hear that. So some people will rinse the color first, leave the foils in, and like kind of rinse between the foils and then pull the foils out. I like to do it all at the same time most of the time. The only time I won't do that is, like I said, if the foils are really blonde and the base color is like a level 4 and below, then it's a different story. But typically I will take the foils out and then I kind of just comb at the roots to blend everything and then I rinse it out. So I want to quickly just talk about Magic's Morph again. So Magic's Morph, and I don't know, is there any, I'm sure there's probably questions on Morph.
Yes, we have explain how to use Morph.
Okay, so how do you use Morph? Morph are they're little drops. I'm going to show you the bottle here. So it is an acidifier. So what I would do is, to me, depending on what you're mixing. So when you're mixing with high lifts, you're going to need more Morph than when you're mixing with like a level 4. And what this is going to do is take your permanent alkaline product with a couple of drops of Morph, and there's a whole mixing ratio and timing and all that. But it's going to make it acidic. So what that means is if I'm going to tone somebody's hair and they have like virgin hair in between, and I want to make sure that I don't get a base bump or a lift or a shift, I'm going to acidify my formula to make it a true deposit only because it's acidic. So we have our high lifts that you could use as a deposit only, but they're alkaline. So if the hair is fine in texture or really light, you could cause a shift in that virgin hair. So if you don't want that, that's when you would use more. If you have a client whose hair is really over processed and the ends are pretty damaged, you don't want to use a alkaline product on it. You could use our color with Magic's Morph to make it a true deposit only without damaging the hair. And so this to me is a game changer. I always say it took Magic's from here to like here, because now I can truly have an all-in-one line. Like I can make an acidic demi or an alkaline, I can do gray coverage and any of it, gray blending. I have all the tools that I need without a massive inventory because we only have 86 colors to choose from. Okay, so Morph, definitely game changer. If you guys go on YouTube and you search Moan International, I have 2 videos using Morph, one a level 8 and then one using it with the high lift. So you can see how to tone with Magic's Morph, and the videos are definitely there for you to watch and learn from. Okay, let's see here.
Okay, so another question is, when using color, what percentage of gray do you use with the 12 volumes and what percentage when you use the 21 volumes?
So to me, the percentage of gray doesn't matter. What matters to me is the texture. So if the texture of the gray is fine and porous, I will use a 12 volume. But manufacturer recommendation is 21 volume for gray coverage. So if it's fine and porous, I will use 12, but typically 90% of the time I'm using 21 volume for gray coverage. So again, doesn't matter percentage of gray, it depends on texture. My grandma, when she was still here, she was 100% snow white, but so fine, like cotton. So I would use 12 volume on her because I didn't need the strength and the power of the 21 volume. All goes back to texture in my opinion, but good question.
Okay, so another question is your recommendation for the scalp process with the lightening, with the Lift 9.
So on a scalp, I would not go over 21 volume. So think about it this way, guys. When it comes to bleaching hair, the power is in the powder. The timing is in the developer. So 2 things with on scalp. Don't go over 21 volume, and you want to mix 3 parts of developer to 1 part of powder. Because when we're dealing with on scalp, we have to make sure, you know, it's a very strong alkaline product that we're putting on. So I wouldn't go over 21 volume. When I used to do on scalp, I stopped doing them because it just stressed me out. But when I used to do them, I would do them with 12 volume. 3 to 1, 3 parts developer, 1 part powder. Because the power is in the powder. I don't want to burn the scalp. I don't want any blisters or anything like that. So 3 parts of 21 volume max to 1 part of lift 9.
So other question is, okay, the difference between morph and fix.
So when you mix fix, these are good questions. You guys are awesome. So when you mix fix is our developer that is a 6 volume. This is what makes Magix 10 into a demi-permanent like color. So it will make it more of a deposit only, but it's still alkaline. When you add morph, it now becomes acidic. And why that's important, like I was saying earlier. Say, for example, I have a natural level 7 client, fine hair, and I do highlights on her. Now we need to tone. If I mix one of our highlights, say 101, with fix, it is more deposit demi-permanent, but there's a lot of alkalinity in there. And what could happen is her natural level 6 could slightly shift. I could expose some warmth because of the alkalinity that's in the color, not the developer. So when I add morph, I'm ensuring that that does not happen, that I get a deposit only that's going to last a little bit longer than like what a liquid demi would do. So fix is good if, like I would use fix as a demi for level 6 and below if the hair is healthy. If there's color on the hair, like if every single hair is colored or highlighted, I don't mind using fix. But if there's any virgin hair on the head, if there's any compromised hair, I will mix morph in my product to make it acidic so I don't have to worry about that. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, thank you for your explanation. Another question is, so if I'm doing the retouch, then want to refresh ends too, do I use the same color, just use the morph on the mid to the ends?
I wouldn't use the same color. So if you're doing a retouch, say for example, this client was a level 7 gold and she had gray, I would mix the a natural with the gold in the level 7 for her ends. I would probably bump it up to a level 8 personally, because what happens is if you still keep using the same level over and over, you're going to brown it out, you're going to muddy it out, and at one point the ends will become darker. So I've mixed a new bowl, 1 level lighter, a little bit more warm with the morph, and then that's what I typically pull through on the ends. But I know a lot of people don't do that. That's just what I would recommend personally. Okay, I want to take a couple more questions because we're running out of time. Oh shit, let's do, well shoot, let's do one more question and then I'm going to show you guys the finished results. Do we have one more? Couple more?
Yes, so could you or would you recommend adding color enhancers to push shades for intensity?
No. So the color enhancers that we have are oxidative. These guys is what you're talking about. So these are color enhancers. Okay. So these are oxidative color, meaning they need developer. They're used to like enhance or neutralize or refine any of the Magix 10 color. Pure Shades is a direct dye. So it's a very different chemical. You can't mix the two. Nothing will happen. It's like when people add developer to direct dyes, like it does nothing to it because they're direct dyes. They don't need developers. So I wouldn't personally mix the two. Okay, in an effort to not take up more of your time, for any questions that I didn't get to answer, because we have a lot of people on the webinar today, my name on here, I have my Instagram handle as well. If you can, just send me your questions on Instagram and I'll be more than happy to answer them when we're done with this webinar. I just don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to show you the final result. Do you guys want to see it?
Araz, please, can you share also your email address, Mowan USA?
Yes, it's araz@mowanusa.com. I think I'll put it in the chat box. Hold on. As I'm going to put my email here for you guys too. Instagram, email, whatever works. I want to answer all the questions to make sure you guys are very confident in understanding the line. Okay, here we go. Here she is. So this is the exact same foiling pattern that I did on our mannequin here, but washed out and completed. So you guys can see the money pop in the front. There's that depth in through here, but she's way lighter and way brighter with just 20 foils. What do you guys think? And the formula on the root was a level 7 gold. Remember, I let it process for 30 or 40 minutes past, and it's not darker. What do you guys think? So pretty, right? And so again, we have this nice depth back through here, but if I wanted to, I could have added a money piece down here. It's so weird looking into a camera because everything's backwards. Okay, so I could have added a money piece down here to give her a little bit more brightness, but we did that beautiful weaving technique of a baby light with the balayage stitches. So see how it looks like she's got that balayage without having to actually paint. And that is what 20 foils can get you guys.
So you have several beautifuls. Love, looks great, looks awesome. Araz, very good class, thank you.
Thank you, guys. See how soft and subtle it is? So yeah, I want to answer your questions, guys. Make sure you either email me or Instagram DM. And like I said, stay on. When I close out the webinar, a survey is going to pop up for you to get your free eye opener kit. So if you stayed on thus far, it looks like most of you have, you will get the eye opener kit. I want to thank you guys for joining us. I hope this was a beneficial and exciting and inspirational webinar for you. As always, we are always here to help Maurizio, myself, any of our education team, and happy hair coloring, as we always say. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you to everyone. I would like to just tell you that we are going to upload this webinar, record the webinar on YouTube tomorrow. So you can, if you wish to rewatch this webinar or the other ones, you can type on YouTube MOA International and look for a playlist of all the webinars where we have done.
Very cool, guys. Thank you so much. Have a happy rest of your Monday and see you guys.
Thank you so much.
We're doing this again next month, so spread the word if you thought it was good. All right, guys. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.